One frosty morning in December, the peaceful hum of activity at Harmony Haven Shelter was interrupted by the crunch of tires on snow-covered gravel. As the car came to a halt, Mia Thompson, a dedicated volunteer with a heart for rescue animals, stepped outside to greet the visitor. What she saw made her pause. A pair of dogs huddled together in the back seat, their coats dirty and their eyes filled with fear. The driver, a young man in his late 20s, stepped out. His face was weary, his voice void of emotion as he said, "I can't keep them anymore. They need more care than I can give." Mia's heart tightened. She glanced at the two dogs. They weren't just sharing space, they were clinging to each other as though the world outside was too much to bear. "What's their story?" she asked gently. The man sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "They showed up on my property a few weeks ago. I tried to care for them, but I just can't afford it. They've been good dogs, but this is better for them." After signing the necessary forms, the man turned and left without looking back. Mia watched the car disappear, the echoes of abandonment heavy in the cold air. Inside the shelter, the dogs were gently guided to a warm corner where water and food awaited. As the staff cleaned them up, their bond became even more apparent. If one moved, the other followed. They slept curled tightly together, their breathing synchronized. Touched by their inseparable connection, the team decided to name them Max and Daisy. Over the next few days, Max and Daisy began adjusting to their new surroundings. Despite the obvious trauma they had endured, there was a quiet resilience about them. They played together, darting around the shelter yard, and at night they would curl up side by side in the same bed. Maya couldn't help but marvel at the strength of their bond. "They're like soulmates," she murmured one evening, watching them from the office window. However, as days turned into weeks, whispers began circulating among the staff. Some worried that their close relationship might deter potential adopters. Many families wanted a single pet, not a package deal. The shelter director even suggested the heartbreaking possibility of separating them to increase their chances of finding homes. A few days later, a family visited the shelter. A father, mother, and two young children explored the kennels with wide eyes and hopeful smiles. The father's attention was immediately drawn to Max. "He's a strong boy," he commented, admiring Max's sturdy frame. The children giggled as Max wagged his tail, his playful nature shining through. Maya stepped forward. "Max is wonderful," she said, her voice careful. "But you should know, he's incredibly close to Daisy. They've been through a lot together." The mother glanced at Daisy, who was sitting quietly in the corner, her soft brown eyes watching with a mix of hope and fear. "We can only take one," the mother said apologetically. "We don't have the space for two dogs." Mia's heart sank as she tried to convince them otherwise. But the family's decision was firm. Max was adopted that day, and as he wagged his tail and walked out the door, Daisy let out a heartbreaking whimper. She understood immediately. That night, the shelter was eerily silent. Daisy didn't touch her food or move from the corner of her kennel. She lay on the cold floor, staring at the door as though waiting for Max to return. Her once bright and curious demeanor had vanished, replaced by a deep, unshakable sadness. Mia stayed late, sitting outside Daisy's kennel with soft reassurances. "He loves you, Daisy," she whispered. "But we'll find you a family, I promise." The next day, Mia crafted a heartfelt post about Daisy's story, including a picture of her curled up on her bed, her eyes heavy with loneliness. The caption read, "Daisy is a gentle soul who lost her brother when he was adopted. She needs a family who can give her the love and companionship she so desperately deserves." The post went viral, shared by thousands across the country. Messages of support flooded the shelter's inbox. And then, one morning, a car pulled into the driveway. A woman named Evelyn stepped out, her expression determined and kind. "I saw Daisy's story," Evelyn explained. "I have two dogs at home, Benny and Luna, and I think Daisy might be the perfect addition to our family." When Evelyn approached Daisy's kennel, the dog lifted her head, her ears perking up for the first time in days. Slowly, she stepped forward, sniffing Evelyn's outstretched hand. In that moment, something shifted. Daisy's tail gave the smallest wag. Evelyn smiled. "You're coming home with me, Daisy," she whispered. Daisy's journey wasn't over, but her new chapter had begun. With Evelyn, Benny, and Luna, she found not just a family, but a sense of belonging. And while she missed Max, her heart slowly began to heal, proving that love and patience can mend even the deepest wounds. While the children laughed and played with Clyde, captivated by his gentle, playful demeanor, the parents deliberated. They had come looking for one dog, and to them, Clyde seemed like the perfect fit. Evelyn, the shelter volunteer who had grown especially attached to Clyde and his sister Bonnie, approached with a hopeful but cautious smile. "Clyde is a wonderful dog," Evelyn began, her voice soft yet imploring. "But I need to tell you he's incredibly close to his sister, Bonnie. They've been through so much together." The mother's gaze shifted to Bonnie, who sat quietly in the corner. Her soft brown eyes held a mixture of hope and fear, a silent plea for someone to notice her too. The mother's expression softened, but she shook her head apologetically. "We can only take one," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "We don't have the space or resources for two dogs." Evelyn's heart sank. Despite her best efforts to advocate for the pair, the family had made up their minds. The adoption paperwork was completed, and soon Clyde was being let out the door. As the family walked away, Clyde looked back at Bonnie, his tail wagging, blissfully unaware that this might be their final goodbye. Bonnie, however, understood. Her whimper cut through the quiet shelter, her cries of despair echoing as she watched her brother disappear. Her once bright eyes, so full of life, dulled with sadness. Evelyn knelt beside her, gently stroking her fur. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, but Bonnie didn't respond. She lay motionless, her head buried in the blanket they used to share. That night, the shelter was unusually quiet. The other dogs, sensing the somber mood, were subdued. Bonnie lay alone, refusing to eat or move from her spot. Evelyn stayed late, sitting beside her kennel, offering soft reassurances. "We'll find you a home, Bonnie," she promised. But her words felt hollow, drifting into the void as Bonnie's gaze remained fixed on the door. The next morning, Evelyn and the shelter staff gathered to discuss Bonnie's plight. It was clear that her depression was worsening. They decided to share her story on social media, hoping to reach someone who might understand her unique situation. Evelyn wrote a heartfelt post, sharing the bond Bonnie and Clyde had shared and the heartbreak of their separation. She included a picture of Bonnie curled up in her bed, her eyes reflecting a deep, unshakable sadness. "Bonnie has so much love to give," Evelyn wrote. "She just needs someone willing to give her a chance." Within hours, the post went viral. Messages poured in from people across the country, moved by Bonnie's story. Yet despite the outpouring of sympathy, the shelter staff remained cautiously optimistic. They had been here before viral posts that sparked hope, but ultimately led nowhere. But this time was different. The next morning, as Evelyn tidied up the shelter, a car pulled into the parking lot earlier than usual. A woman in her 40s stepped out, her expression a mix of determination and empathy. She introduced herself as Melissa, a dog lover who had recently lost her own beloved pet. "I saw Bonnie's story," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I couldn't stop thinking about her." Evelyn led Melissa to Bonnie's kennel, her heart racing with hope. As they approached, Bonnie lifted her head. Her ears perked up a reaction Evelyn hadn't seen in days. Melissa knelt down, speaking softly to Bonnie. She extended her hand, allowing Bonnie to sniff her fingers. Slowly, Bonnie inched forward, her body language tentative but curious. For the first time since Clyde's departure, Bonnie wagged her tail. Melissa finalized the adoption paperwork that same day. As Evelyn handed her Bonnie's leash, she whispered, "Take good care of her. She deserves all the happiness in the world." Melissa nodded, her eyes glistening. "I promise." As Melissa and Bonnie left the shelter, there was a sense of closure. Bonnie's journey wasn't over, but her new chapter had begun. And while the emptiness of losing Clyde would never completely fade, Bonnie was on her way to healing, a reminder of the resilience of love and the power of second chances. Evelyn had barely finished her morning rounds when she saw the car pull into the shelter's gravel lot. The engine hadn't even stopped before the driver's door opened, and out stepped a woman in her 40s, her face a mix of determination and anticipation. Evelyn, still groggy from a sleepless night, straightened up and walked over to greet the visitor. The woman introduced herself as Hannah, a devoted dog lover who had recently lost her older companion, Daisy. Her voice softened as she explained why she was there. "I saw Bonnie's story last night," she began, her eyes glistening. "Something about her, I just couldn't stop thinking about her. I've been looking for a companion for my dog, Max, and when I read about her bond with Clyde, it struck a chord." Hannah's words were a spark of hope in the darkness that had consumed Bonnie's life. Evelyn's heart raced. Could this be the person Bonnie had been waiting for? Without hesitation, Evelyn led Hannah to the kennels where Bonnie lay curled in her usual spot, her head resting on her paws, a picture of heartbreak. As Hannah approached, Evelyn held her breath. Bonnie's ears twitched in almost imperceptible movement, but one Evelyn hadn't seen in days. Hannah crouched down, speaking softly to Bonnie, her voice warm and soothing. She extended her hand, letting Bonnie sniff her fingers before gently stroking her fur. To everyone's astonishment, Bonnie slowly lifted her head. Her eyes locked onto Hannah's with an intensity that was both heart-wrenching and filled with fragile hope. For the first time in weeks, Bonnie moved closer to someone. Her body language, once guarded and withdrawn, now showed a glimmer of trust. Evelyn stepped back, watching with bated breath. It was clear to her that something special was happening. Hannah continued to talk to Bonnie, sharing stories about her late dog Daisy and her current one, Mac. She spoke as if Bonnie could understand every word, and maybe she did because Bonnie's gaze never wavered. The bond between them was undeniable. Hannah was exactly what Bonnie needed, a source of love and stability to pull her from the shadows of despair. And for Hannah, it was clear that Bonnie had already begun to fill a void left by Daisy's passing. When Hannah reached out to hold Bonnie's leash, Evelyn saw a transformation unfold. Bonnie's body relaxed, her eyes brightened, and her tail, motionless for so long, began to wag ever so slightly. It was a small movement, but to Evelyn and the staff, it was nothing short of a miracle. As Evelyn prepared the adoption papers, Hannah knelt beside Bonnie, gently stroking her fur. "From now on, your name is Luna," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. A spark of light after all the darkness. Bonnie, now Luna, seemed to understand. She leaned into Hannah, her tail wagging with a new sense of hope. Evelyn handed over the final paperwork, tears brimming in her eyes. "Take good care of her," she said, her voice trembling. "She's been through so much. She deserves this." Hannah nodded, her own tears threatening to spill. "I promise," she replied. "She'll never feel alone again." As Luna and Hannah walked out of the shelter, the staff gathered to wave goodbye. They watched as Luna stepped into a new chapter of her life, leaving behind the heartbreak, but carrying the lessons of love and resilience. At her new home, Luna hesitated as she stepped out of the car, her paws touching unfamiliar ground. Hannah knelt beside her, offering gentle reassurance before leading her inside. Max, Hannah's other dog, was waiting. The two dogs eyed each other cautiously, their movements slow and deliberate as they circled each other. Hannah held her breath, worried about how this introduction would go. But after a tense moment, Max took a step forward and nudged Luna with his nose, a small but powerful gesture of acceptance. Luna wagged her tail in response, and within minutes, the two were cautiously playing, their initial hesitance giving way to what would soon become a deep bond. Over the next few days, Luna settled into her new home. She followed Hannah everywhere, her tail wagging with newfound joy. Max, once lonely himself, now had a companion to share his days with. Together, they explored the yard, played in the living room, and napped side by side in the sunlight. For Hannah, Luna was more than just a new addition to the family. She was a reminder of the power of second chances, of resilience, and of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Luna had found her forever home, but in the process, she had given Hannah something just as precious, a reason to smile, to hope, and to believe in new beginnings. Evelyn had just finished filling out the last bit of paperwork when the shelter staff gathered around, their faces a mix of bittersweet joy. It wasn't every day they witnessed a story like this, a dog so broken by the loss of her brother finding hope and love in a new home. Evelyn knelt beside Luna, the new name lovingly chosen for the dog who had once been called Bonnie. Stroking Luna's fur, she whispered, "You deserve all the happiness in the world." As Hannah, Luna's new owner, held the leash, Evelyn handed over the documents, her voice thick with emotion. "Take good care of her," she said. "She's been through so much." Hannah's eyes glistened as she replied, "I promise. She'll never feel alone again." The shelter staff stood outside, waving as Hannah's car pulled out of the parking lot, Luna peering through the back window. Evelyn stayed a moment longer, watching until the car disappeared from view. For the first time in weeks, she felt a deep sense of closure. Luna was on her way to a better life. When they arrived at Hannah's home, Luna hesitated at the car door, her paws poised to touch unfamiliar ground. Hannah crouched beside her, speaking in soft, reassuring tones. "It's okay, Luna. You're safe now." Luna stepped out cautiously, her tail low but wagging slightly. The house was warm and inviting, with toys scattered on the floor and a dog bed set up near the fireplace. Waiting in the living room was Max, Hannah's other dog, a gentle retriever who had been mourning the loss of his own companion. The two dogs approached each other slowly, circling with measured curiosity. Hannah watched nervously, hoping this introduction would go smoothly. Luna's ears twitched as she observed Max's movements, her body language cautious but not fearful. Then, in a surprising moment, Max leaned forward and gave Luna a gentle nudge with his nose. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. Luna wagged her tail in response, tentatively at first, then more enthusiastically, as she realized she was being welcomed. Within minutes, they were sniffing and playing, their initial hesitance melting away into what would soon become a deep bond. Hannah exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, tears welling in her eyes. It was a sight she had dreamed of Luna, once lost and heartbroken, finding companionship and joy in her new family. Over the next few days, Luna began to settle into her new routine. She followed Hannah and Max everywhere, her tail wagging with increasing confidence. Hannah spent extra time with her, taking her on long walks through the nearby woods and introducing her to the neighborhood dogs. Each day, Luna's personality began to shine through a playful, loving spirit who seemed determined to make up for the time she had lost. One morning, however, Hannah noticed something unusual. Luna, usually full of energy, seemed subdued. Her movements were slow and her eyes lacked their usual sparkle. Concerned, Hannah immediately took her to the vet. After running a series of tests, the vet reassured Hannah that Luna was healthy. "She's likely still adjusting," the vet explained. "Sometimes the emotional weight of such a big change takes time to fully process." Relieved, Hannah redoubled her efforts to make Luna feel at home. She introduced new routines, planned longer play sessions, and even organized playdates with Max and other dogs. Slowly but surely, Luna's confidence returned, and with it, her boundless joy for life. Weeks turned into months, and the transformation in Luna was nothing short of miraculous. The dog who had once curled up in a lonely corner of the shelter was now a vibrant, joyful companion. She loved racing Max through the yard, exploring trails with Hannah, and lounging in the sun on lazy afternoons. Hannah, proud of Luna's progress, began sharing updates on social media. She posted photos of Luna's playful antics and videos of her snuggling with Max, each caption filled with gratitude for the love and resilience Luna had brought into their lives. To Hannah's surprise, Luna's story began to gain traction. Comments and messages poured in from people moved by her journey, many inspired to adopt pets of their own. One evening, as Hannah scrolled through the comments, one message stood out. It was from the family who had adopted Clyde, Luna's brother. The shelter had shared Hannah's posts on their page, and the family had seen them. They wrote about Clyde's happy life, but mentioned a longing they couldn't ignore, a sense that Clyde still missed the sister he had once been inseparable from. Hannah's heart raced at the idea of reuniting Luna and Clyde. She quickly responded, arranging a playdate for the siblings. The day of the reunion arrived, and Hannah could feel the excitement in the air as they drove to the park. Luna sat quietly in the back seat, her head resting on the window, as if sensing something special was about to happen. When they arrived, the family was already there, Clyde sitting calmly by their side. As soon as Luna stepped out of the car, Clyde's demeanor changed. His tail began wagging furiously, and he let out an excited bark. Luna froze for a moment, her eyes locked on Clyde's. Then, as if a switch had flipped, she bolted toward him. The two dogs collided in a flurry of fur and joy, barking, sniffing, and playfully nipping at each other. It was as if no time had passed since they were last together. Tears streamed down Hannah's face as she watched the reunion, the bond between the siblings as strong as ever. The families agreed to make these playdates a regular occurrence, ensuring Luna and Clyde would remain a part of each other's lives. That evening, as Hannah sat on the porch watching the sunset, Luna lay at her feet, her eyes full of trust and contentment. Hannah reached down, stroking her fur. "Thank you for finding me," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Luna wagged her tail in response, as if to say, "Thank you for saving me." Their journey had been long and filled with challenges, but it had also been transformative. Together, they had found healing, love, and a second chance, a reminder of the incredible power of resilience and the unbreakable bonds we share with those we love. Evelyn could hardly contain her nerves as she drove to the park, Ember lying quietly in the back seat. The idea of reuniting Ember with her brother, Clyde, filled her with both excitement and apprehension. What if the reunion didn't go as planned? What if it brought back painful memories for Ember? But deep down, Evelyn knew this was a necessary step in Ember's journey of healing, a chance to reconnect and reclaim a part of her past. When they arrived, the family who had adopted Clyde was already waiting. Clyde, now a strong and handsome dog, sat calmly beside them, his tail wagging gently as he surveyed the park. The moment Evelyn opened the car door, Ember froze, her eyes locking onto Clyde. For a brief second, she stood still, her ears perked, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, as if something clicked, Ember bolted towards Clyde, her tail wagging furiously. Clyde, recognizing his sister, barked in excitement and ran to meet her. The two collided in a joyous flurry of fur and movement, sniffing, barking, and playfully nipping at each other. It was as though no time had passed since they were last together. Evelyn watched with tears in her eyes as the siblings reunited. The other family stood nearby, equally moved by the sight of the two dogs reconnecting. "It's like they never missed a beat," the father said softly, his voice tinged with awe. The playdate lasted for hours. Clyde and Ember raced around the park, tumbling in the grass and chasing each other with an exuberance that brought smiles to everyone's faces. By the time the sun began to set, both dogs were thoroughly exhausted but visibly happy. The families agreed to make these reunions a regular occurrence, ensuring that the siblings would remain a part of each other's lives. As Evelyn drove home, Ember lay sprawled across the back seat, her eyes drooping with contentment. Evelyn glanced at her in the rearview mirror and felt a wave of fulfillment wash over her. This reunion had been more than just a chance for Ember to see her brother. It had been the final piece of her healing journey. Back at home, Ember resumed her new routine with renewed energy. She played with Benny and Luna, her tail wagging enthusiastically as they chased each other around the yard. Evelyn couldn't help but smile as she watched Ember's playful antics. The once timid dog who had curled up in despair at the shelter was now a vibrant and affectionate companion, brimming with life and love. Over the following weeks, Evelyn shared updates about Ember's transformation on social media. She posted pictures of Ember lounging in the sun, playing with Benny and Luna, and exploring trails on their daily walks. Each post garnered heartfelt comments and shares, with people moved by Ember's incredible journey. One day, Evelyn received a message from a follower who had been inspired by Ember's story to adopt a shelter dog of their own. "Seeing Ember find happiness after all she's been through gave me the courage to give another dog a chance," the message read. Evelyn felt a lump in her throat as she read the words, realizing just how far-reaching Ember's story had become. As time went on, Ember's bond with her new family grew stronger. She and Benny became inseparable, often napping together by the fireplace or exploring the backyard side by side. Luna, the more energetic of the trio, loved to engage Ember in playful games, encouraging her to chase after toys or wrestle in the grass. Evelyn often found herself reflecting on how much Ember had brought to their lives. The house, once quiet and routine, was now filled with the joyful sounds of paws on hardwood floors and the laughter that came from watching her dog's antics. Ember had not only healed from her past, but had also brought a newfound sense of purpose and joy to Evelyn and her other dogs. One evening, as the sun set and the sky painted the horizon in hues of orange and pink, Evelyn sat on her porch with Ember resting at her feet. She reached down to stroke Ember's fur, her voice soft and full of emotion. "Thank you for finding us," she whispered. Ember looked up, her eyes full of trust and love, and wagged her tail. It was a simple moment, yet it encapsulated everything Evelyn had hoped for when she first brought Ember home: love, connection, and the healing power of a second chance. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had led them to a place of undeniable happiness. Evelyn knew that Ember's story wasn't just about a dog finding a home. It was about resilience, hope, and the transformative power of love. And for that, she would be forever grateful. The story of Ember is more than just a tale of a shelter dog finding her forever home. It's a profound reminder of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of compassion. In our own lives, we often encounter challenges that leave us feeling broken or disconnected, much like Ember after being separated from her brother. But just as Evelyn's unwavering care and patience helped Ember heal, we too can find healing and growth through the support of those who believe in us and through our willingness to embrace new beginnings. One key takeaway from this story is the importance of connection. Relationships, whether with people, pets, or communities, play a vital role in helping us navigate life's ups and downs. Ember's bond with Evelyn and her reunion with Clyde serve as poignant reminders that love and connection can mend even the deepest wounds. In your own life, prioritize building and maintaining relationships that uplift and support you. Reach out to loved ones, join communities that share your passions, and never underestimate the power of small acts of kindness. Another lesson is about resilience and second chances. Life doesn't always go as planned, and setbacks can feel insurmountable. But like Ember, who found joy and trust again despite her hardships, we can learn to move forward by embracing opportunities for growth and change. Whether it's starting over in a new environment, taking on a challenge, or finding new passions, every step forward is a chance to rebuild and thrive. Finally, Ember's story encourages us to act with compassion and empathy. Just as Evelyn gave Ember the love and care she deserved, we should strive to extend kindness to those in need, whether it's helping a struggling friend, volunteering, or even adopting a pet. Small acts of compassion can create ripples of positive change in ways we can't always foresee. Please rate this story from 1 to 10. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reactions, and suggestions for new stories. Share your opinion and help us make the channel even better.